Got some new fan art for you guys. So I was looking at some Mormon videos, and I came across yet another sob story where a guy has a terrible life, and he finds Mormonism, and it completely turns it around. This kind of seems to be their MO at this point. So we're going to take a closer look. Let's get into it. One thing to remember is the fact that Mormons are so against drugs and alcohol that this almost has an entirely different meaning to them. Anybody who does drugs is a social pariah. They're sinners in the eyes of the Lord. They're treated like dirt. Damn the fact that it's a disease. Damn the psychology behind it. Damn the psychologists explaining what's happening in their brains. Damn the doctors trying to end the epidemic. And damn the people's inability to stop, no matter how hard they try. It's their fault, and if they don't stop, there will be consequences. Obviously, drugs are harmful. I think we can all accept that. But hating the person or cutting them off from a social network of people who they need to help them stop is wrong. And that's the kind of thing you can expect from Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons alike. Okay, sorry to get off on that little tangent. Let's continue.
One day, my father called me out of the blue and said, "Son, I've got a lump in my brain." And 11 months later, he had passed away. My father was my rock. He was my foundation. And so when he passed away of cancer, I didn't know what to do. It was like part of me died as well. I was a full-blown alcoholic. I was waking up in the morning wishing that I didn't exist. It wasn't that I would just die and move on. I wanted God to get rid of me. I thought he had made a mistake in creating me, and that I was worthless. And the thought had crossed my mind several times of ending my life, and I didn't think there was a way out.
Okay, here we go again. Some crazy, terrible thing. So this kid is doing drugs, and his father died of cancer. Tragedy strikes his life, which pushes him into alcoholism. And as I said, don't forget that Mormons are so against alcohol. It's like a mortal sin in their culture. And if you guys were wondering how Mormons view suicide, I'll tell you. I went to the Brigham Young, quote-unquote, university website and read up on suicide. So let's take a look at what it says. It says, from an LDS perspective, suicide is a moral issue and is to be handled with particular sensitivity and human caring. The General Handbook of Instructions, 1989, says, a person who takes his own life may not be responsible for his acts. Only God can judge such a matter. A person who has considered suicide seriously or has attempted suicide should be counseled by his bishop and may be encouraged to seek professional help. Such contacts need to be personalized and enduring. The inclination to commit suicide represents a crisis in a person's life and should not be taken lightly. Underlying causes should be identified and treated. As I said, this is straight from the BYU website. That's kind of their official stance. However, their suicide rates are through the roof, especially recently. Take a look at this graph. So you have to give them credit for being a little more relaxed with suicide than, say, some extremist Baptists or Catholics who believe it's a sin worthy of hell, unforgivable on the technicality that you can't have the sin absolved before you die. But the fact that suicide rates are increasing so dramatically in a state that's 60% Mormon is startling. Yes, you heard that right. 60.7% of Utah's population of 3.1 million people are Mormon. Let's drive home just how big of a percentage that is. Non-Hispanic whites in America total 62% of Americans. So proportionally, there are just as many Mormons in Utah as there are whites in America. Think about that. Every time you see a white person, imagine them being a Mormon. Now think about this statistic. According to a Gallup poll, around 44% of the U.S. believes that God created people less than 10,000 years ago, and that Noah's Ark is a real, literal story. That's basically 2/3 of every white person you see. That is insane and scary. Our education system is seriously lacking. Okay, let's continue.
There's a picture of Christ that my father drew, and this picture has always been part of me in my life. I took this picture with me everywhere I went, and I had the thought come into my mind, Mike, get down on your knees and say a prayer. I slowly got on my knees. I had no idea what to say. The only thing that I could get out of my mouth, the only words that I could get out were help me. Help me. And as soon as those words left my lips, I felt his embrace. And I knew that he loved me. I knew that I was worth something to him.
Here they go again. This dude's life is in shambles, and praying made it all better. You know what would do just as much? Writing in a journal. Because that's basically what you're doing, talking to yourself. The real difference between prayer and writing in a journal is the fact that your journal could possibly be read by somebody else. Once a prayer leaves your lips, it's gone forever. There have been a lot of prayer studies in the past, but they've done some fairly recently, and they had some interesting results. They did a meta-analysis in 2006, which is basically where they look at all the studies they've done, and they analyze the results of all those studies to get an overarching result. Like with climate change, they did a meta-analysis that showed that 90-something% of research papers agree that it's happening. So they did one on 14 studies about intercessory prayer, and the analysis showed that there's no discernible effect. In one study, it showed that people who knew they were being prayed for actually did worse than the people who didn't know they were being prayed for. But everybody fared about the same ultimately. That's because people who knew they were being prayed for felt pressured into getting better. Felt like if they didn't get better, it would disprove God or something. Anyways, the difference is pretty much negligible in all cases. Okay, got sidetracked again. Moving on.
I decided I was going to go back to church. And I tried really hard, but the habit was still there. At that point, I felt like I could forgive other people, but I couldn't forgive myself. 2 weeks after going back to church for the first time, I just purchased this scooter. My girlfriend, Alicia, and I were hit head on. It was bad. We didn't have helmets on, and Alicia broke her neck and back in several places. I broke my skull in 3 places and had traumatic brain injuries, and I was in a coma. And 3 days after the accident, I woke up from my coma. There was a lot of healing that needed to be done. As I was laying in bed, I had a very distinct and very real feeling come to me. In the scriptures, there's a verse that says, "You're spared by the prayers of the righteous."
Of course, things continue to get worse and worse. Dude almost dies. They're laying this on pretty thick, aren't they? No, you were not spared because of faith of those around you. You were spared because the doctors knew what the they were doing. Are you really gonna thank God for something millennia of progress in medicine gave us? We see as far as we do because we stand on the shoulders of giants. And you're going back to the fucking Stone Age by thanking God for saving your life. This. You have no idea what mankind's drive forward toward progress has done for you.
And I knew that because of the faith of those around me, and because of the love of those around me, that I was spared. As I got out of the hospital and as I started to rehabilitate, I started to go to LDS 12-step meetings. And
LDS 12-step meetings. LDS 12-step meetings. Oh! Don't even get me started on 12-step meetings. The LDS Church has those? Oh my god, I could do a whole video on this alone. Kinda sucks I got to the end of this video before realizing this existed. So I'm gonna have to summarize it. Here are the 12 steps from the LDS Church. Honesty, hope, trust in God, truth and confession, change of heart and humility, forgiveness, restitution and reconciliation, daily accountability, personal revelation, and service. Oh wow, service. I wonder what that one could be. I'm not even breaking these down right now, but I can tell you what my next video is going to be about.
I started to get myself committed to the Lord. It is by the grace of God that I was in that accident. And it's not something I'd ever want to go through again, and I'm glad it's in the past. But that accident spared me. That accident gave me the circumstances that I need to start to humble myself and to look to Him again. And as I looked to my Savior, He came to me and He redeemed me. He saved my soul where I didn't think it could be saved anymore.
And that's the end of it. God, this infuriates me. They do a lot of stuff on drugs, and I've covered some of their material on drug addicts. I honestly have no idea how I made it this far without realizing they had their own custom 12-step program. I guess I can't really see their 12-step program being used very often, considering how they feel about drugs. But I'm guessing it's probably used by new members who are trying to join and get off drugs at the same time, as this guy was doing. Anyways, that's all I've got for you. Follow me on Patreon, all social media, and check out my Discord. Thanks for watching, guys.